Good day everyone, I am Yashudi Guzman Abogar, 22 BSN Block 2. Welcome to the short video lecture I have prepared entitled Different Periods of Philippine Literature. Etymologically, the term literature derives from the Latin term littera, which means a contents with letters. Some loosely interpret literature as any printed matter written, with a book, a magazine, or a pamphlet somehow. This is a limited definition since literature also applies to spoken and song text. Definitions of literature have varied over time. It is sometimes defined as a fatal reproduction of man-manifold experiences blended into one harmonious expression. Others describe as a piece of work that is undying, may it be oral, written, or visual. It portrays human existence and expresses the feelings and emotion of people in response to their everyday efforts to live and interact with their environment. Because literature deals with ideas, thoughts, and emotion of man, literature is said to be the story of man. Man's love's grief, thoughts, dreams, and aspiration couched in beautiful language is literature. Studying literature is like looking at the mirror of life where man's experiences, innermost feelings, and thoughts are reflected. Classification of literature. Literature can be classified according to structure, form, and genre for structures. It can be fiction or non-fiction. These two can sometimes intersect, but in general, fiction refers to plot settings and characters created from the imagination, while non-fiction refers to factual stories focused on actual events and people. In terms of form, literature can be prose and poetry. Prose uses normal language patterns and is written in sentences and paragraphs. Poetry, on the other hand, is written in lines and stanzas. It uses artistic language. Genre deals with the category of an art, music, or literature. Comedy, drama, horror, and mystery are genres. There could also be some genres in literature. Example, under the mystery genre are the subgenre of thriller, suspense, and investigative. Philippine literature. The beginning of our country's literature had started with fable and legend made by ancient Filipinos. Long before the arrival of Spanish influence, our Philippine literature had achieved a stature so phenomenal since the inception of both Spanish and English languages in our culture. Why do we need to study Philippine literature? Regardless of your nationality, it is always very important to study the literature of your own country. In doing so, you are not only learning the historical aspect of your land, but you are also keeping alive the thoughts, beliefs, and cultural variation of your ancestors that differentiate your country from the rest of the world. Literature and history. Literature is a diverse and rich group of works that has evolved side by side with the country's history. The main connection between literature and history is that literature is used to record and represent history. The two are intertwined with one another. However, these are a big difference between the two. History poses itself as a fact while literature is taken to be an artistic form. Different periods of Philippine literature. Philippine literature withstood time and periods and has evolved through generation for every period. That past different genres appeared in these literary works, rooted for all regions, reflecting their culture, society, and lifestyle. Time frames may not be necessary in the study of literature, but since literature and history are inseparable, related has become facilitative to map up a system which will aid you in delineating certain time boundaries. Pre-colonial period. In the pre-colonial period, literature was in a oral form as technology or printing is not available yet. The sources are usually the local native town folks, works such as epic, legends, folklore, saliwakiin, bugtong songs such as the Oya or Heli are passed on from generation to generations, and they are still well known up to this day as they are being taught in schools. Spanish colonization period. Philippine literature changed during the Spanish period. It was centered on the Christian faith. Three Spanish literary types continued to develop. However, there was a gradual shift of interest from the nature and natural phenomena to the lives of the saints, miracles, and invocation based on the teaching of the Catholic Church. The works during this time are imitative of the Spanish theme forms and traditions. Religious matter were improved as new novenas and prayer books, biographies of the saint tales and novels. Nationalistic and propaganda and revolutionary period. The nationalistic period has two movements, the propaganda movement and revolution movement. The propaganda movement was reformatory and objective and its members are college students. Mostly based in Spain, the primary propagandists were Jose Rizal Mircelo, H. del Pilar, and Graciano Lopez. The exposure of the evils of the Spanish rule in the Philippines was because of result No Limitang Here and El Filibusterismo. This has paved the way to a revolution against Spain. The revolutionary movement took over as the propaganda failed to get much reform. This was, of course, more violent and its demands complete independence from Spain. That Katipunan was founded by Andres Bonifacio, who was inspired by Result novels. American colonial period. During the American period, English was introduced to school. Throughout the country in use as a medium of instructions, the literary genres that emerged during the American period was poetry, zarzuela, short stories, and novels. Poetry was written in the three languages, which are Filipino, Spanish, and English. Japanese colonization period. During the Japanese period, Philippine literature in English was stopped and writer turned to writing in Filipino. The common theme of most poems during the Japanese occupation was nationalism, country, love, and life in the various faith, religion, and the arts. Essays were composed to glorify Filipinos and to figuratively attack the Japanese. Contemporary modern period. The Philippine literature blossomed in this period. Filipino writers mastered various languages, especially with the appearance of new publication after martial law. They continue write poetry, short stories, novel, and essay, whether these are especially committed gender or ethnic related or our personal intention are not. The rebirth of freedom. This was the period when Philippines regained its freedom and the Filipino flag waved joyously along the chains were finally broken. There was a proliferation of newspapers as Filipinos learned to express themselves confidently. Journalists had their day. Notable Filipino writers and works. Here are some notable Filipino writers and works that changed the world. They are still being taught in school and continues to change the world. Regional literature. Local color original literature is fiction and poetry that focuses on the character, dialect, custom, topography, and other features, particular to a specific region. Bicolanos, we have Bicolano literature as our regional literature. Bicolano literature. Bicol is the language of almost 5 million people in province of Albay, Camarines Norte, Masbate, and Sorsogon that constitute the political region Bicolano literature has flourished, providing a lively literacy, flavor unrivalated by any other literary tradition, just like other local traditions and cultures in the country. Bicolano literature has its roots in orally transmitted poems and mythical narratives that reflect the history of people. Characteristic of Bicol literature. The transformation of literature can be traced by going through local and national history. The Bicol people have writing tradition with roots and its ancient folk ways. Tingsik is a form of short poetry in the bigger language that often are cynical or flattering and the tenor to touch certain topic. Issues and people is akin to a haiku but more snappish and deliberate. Take six are often delivered spontaneously with 2 to 4 lines. Indeed, the diversity and richness of Philippine literature evolved side by side with the country's history. This can best be appreciated in the context of the country's pre-colonial cultural tradition and the social-political histories of its colonial and contemporary tradition.